Great. Welcome to Unschooling 101. We give these sessions every month from Unschooling Canada Association. We want to really promote the idea of self-directed education as a very effective method of home education. So this month, January, we have been very busy. People go through the holidays with their kids. They have a great family holiday, family time. And January comes and the children don't want to go back to school. And that's when we get a lot of, even in home education, they don't want to go back to books and curriculum. They want to do what they did over Christmas. And that's a great way to learn. Christmas or holidays, whatever you celebrate, is just a prime way that self-directed education works. So I'm going to talk a little bit tonight about what self-education, what unschooling is, and but mostly this is going to be learner centered. So I really want to answer the questions you want to ask. This is advertised across Canada. We may have people from outside Canada, but I'm in Alberta. Alberta is considered one of the strictest provinces besides Quebec in order to unschool. And we make it work in Alberta within a lot of the guidelines and regulations that our province has set up. Unschooling is a methodology of home education. You cannot really send your kids to school. Well, you can. There is a whole philosophy called unschooling school where you can sign your kids up for school and pick and choose what they do when they go. You're in charge. You are the parent. You use the system that your taxes pay for. And if that works for you, that's good. I know in my case, I got sick of getting those truancy letters and decided, maybe I would just go do this under home education. But there is, if you're interested in that, there is a website called Unschooling School, which is really interesting. Um, we all learn something new, don't we? Anyways, this is me. I'm Judy Arnall. My work life is teaching brain development, child behavior, and child development I taught for Alberta Health Services for 13 years. I taught for the University of Calgary for 13 years. And that's where adult education really opened my eyes to how better child education could be, because adult education is so learner centered. We are there for adults. We are not their bosses. We're not their authoritative figure. We are there on their learning journey to help them get the knowledge and skills they want. And when I had kids, I couldn't really reconcile why child education couldn't be that way either. So I'm also a non-punitive parent. I stopped punishing my kids when the oldest was 13. Actually, no, when he was 8. And I have raised 5 children without punishment. So when I sent them to school, which is a punishing, coercive environment, I really had a hard time reconciling that as well. Even though, that's not how I did at home. So moving on here. So I'll tell you a bit about our story when we get there, but just if you haven't looked at our website at Unschooling Canada Association, please do. We have a lot of good stuff on there. A lot of stuff that needs updating though, too, especially the provincial things. If you haven't been to my blog, this is our story. This is, I blog on topics that come up of interest. My latest one was my son who self-taught calculus. If because a lot of people are worried about math when they look at unschooling. And I wanted to share that when kids need to learn calculus for something, for a goal they want, they're willing to learn it, whether it's through tutors, self-taught, or classroom. That's unschooling. So my blog is kind of a continuation of my book, but more up-to-date stories. So now I have a lot of slides. I'm not going to talk to you about all those slides, but what is unschooling? Well, 90% of children actually go to school. And when they go to school, they're so excited about learning. They're so curious when they're little children. They have passion for learning. Every child learns from the moment they're born until that day when hopefully they're, 120 years old, they die. So brains keep working all the time. You've probably heard in the news about learning losses during COVID. And what that means is it's not that kids stopped learning, they stopped learning what the government agenda was. But they didn't stop learning. They continued learning about math in their daily life because math is all around us. They continued learning English because they pick it up, and English or other languages are all around us. They continued learning lots of random tidbits, and that will serve them later as they pursue more studies and curiosity of their interests. But when we send kids to school, what happens to their engagement between age 5 and 15? Most kids get burned out. They tend to act out when they're not engaged. They tend to tune out when they're older and they're teenagers, but they have to be there. And then as soon as they're able to, they're dropping out if they are not engaged in their studies. In Alberta, the completion rate for high school is 80%. So 1 out of every 5 brains is lost, is not engaged in the system. And yet the system doesn't change at all to make that better. And that's pretty sad news. So when I talk about self-directed education or unschooling, the difference is the media and general population use the term unschooling. The education field uses the term self-directed education, although you have to be careful of people's definitions of these things. In school, self-directed education usually just means the pacing of the government imposed curriculum. In home education, unschooling means the child decides what they're going to learn, when they're going to learn it, how they're going to learn, and if they're going to learn it. If they don't want to learn it, they don't learn it. It's not imposed. It's not coerced. There's no punishments or bribery in learning. So that is unschooling or self-directed education. It doesn't always mean it's self-taught. A lot of it is self-taught, but it's learner-driven. The learner wants to learn it. So if the learner chooses a tutor or a classroom or an online course, it's them deciding that's what they want to do. So in true self-directed education, in true unschooling, there are no motivation problems. And unlike homeschooling, where there is motivation problems, a lot of kids, especially this time of the year, are tired of the curriculum. They don't want to do the exercises. They don't want to do the work. They're pushing back. It's not their agenda. It's not what they want to learn. And maybe they have to learn it to pass an exam, but how much is that real learning and how much of that is they're going to retain anyways? We know that from the summer learning slide. Kids that don't choose what they want to learn lose it as soon as they don't need it. Okay, so it can be self-taught, but not always. So unschooling looks like this. This is ages. So birth to age 5, every child unschools. They play toddlers, preschoolers, they play whatever they want to play with, and they learn through play. Well, children who unschool just keep on playing all the way through their childhood from 0 to age 18. Where for typical, those 90% of kids that go to school, we pull them off that play direction and we say, okay, you can't play anymore. You have to go to this place called school and you have to learn what the government thinks you have to learn instead of playing. And those kids don't know any other way. Where unschoolers, they learn pretty well what school kids learn, but through play. And I tested that because in Alberta, we have provincial achievement exams at different intervals. So we used to have them grade 3, grade 6, grade 9. When my kids were in grade 6 and grade 9, I asked them, would you mind taking an exam just to see how you stack up by not attending school? And they did for me, and they scored anywhere in the acceptable or excellent range in math and English. I didn't let them write social studies or science because those are topic based in most provinces. But math and English is competency everywhere in the world pretty well. So when kids get to about age 17, now this is anecdotal with me and my friends. We kind of found out around age 17 is when kids come up from the basement of video games and say, I want to know what it takes to be a computer programmer. And that's when they may have a goal, or you may sit them down and say, well, this is what you need to start learning about computer programming. You can take all these pathways, and the child is motivated to choose a goal. That's where they may go into more formal education and get qualifications to go out in the work world. I've seen that in my crew. I have 5 kids, and around age 16, 17, I said, do you want to pursue engineering? Do you want to look into science? Do you want to look into humanities? And they said, yeah, that might be good. And I sat down and said, well, here's what needs to be done. Here's the credentials. So some of them pick up online courses, some of them self-teach what they need to do to write exams, depends on the provincial regulations. And that kind of fits with our scientific knowledge of the prefrontal cortex, which is the final phase of the brain's development. Here, this shows the development of self-control, planning, decision-making, risk-taking, all those higher order brain functions. And you can see right here between 15 and 25 is 17. That's where that final big leap of brain development kicks in for most of our population. And you can see it. You can see it when that happens. And that's when kids may decide to go to a formal high school. They may decide to take online courses, but they're motivated. They're fresh. They haven't had 16 years of schooling where they're burned out now. And they're gearing up to get really, really good studying and marks when other kids are burning out. And those are the years that decide post-secondary entrance. So when I give this talk, I often tell people, well, name a career. Let's say your 17-year-old comes up from the basement and says, Mom, Dad, I want to be blah when I grow up. Okay. Most times I get doctor shouted at me. So let's say that 17-year-old says, I want to be a doctor. Well, having played since birth, what do? All they need to do is probably 2 years of preparation to get into their first degree. Most people choose biology as a first degree to go into med school. So 2 years of prep. This is what they would need, or the equivalent of these courses across Canada. And I witnessed this myself. One of my sons wanted to go into the medical field, had no math or science that was formal. Took him 2 years prep to get it. And it was still funded because he was still under 20 in our province. And he did it. He was motivated. This is what he wanted to do. And he worked very hard. He wasn't naturally gifted, but he worked really hard. And that's the key to any type of education. It has to be motivated by the learner. Has to. And the sooner we accept that, the sooner people understand unschooling, because it's totally learner accepted. I've probably been talking more than 10 minutes now. Okay, so I'll wrap this up. So there's 3 ways to get an education. There's school, which is government controlled. There's home education, which is parent controlled. And then there's unschooling, which is learner controlled. Okay, I talked about that. So I do talk about our story a bit. So like I said, I'm non-punitive parenting, and I sent my first two sons to school. I have five children. I have four boys and one girl in the middle. So my two oldest kids went to school, and because we had French immersion in our neighborhood, we had English schools, and my partner wasn't really on board with homeschooling, so he wanted to send the kids to school, so we did. One child had a learning disability. The other child was exceptionally smart and was bored. So they came home from school, put in their time, put in their hours, and wanted to know what they really wanted to know. So this is my son. He wanted to plant an egg and see if it grew an egg tree. He would nag me for weeks. He'd say, Mom, will it grow an egg tree? I want to grow an eggs. And I said, well, okay, let's do it. And more, I was encouraging the children's curiosity, but we were after schooling. So they would put in their hours, but come home and learn what they really, really wanted to learn, where their curiosity was taking. And I thought, okay, I can't keep doing this. I was working at the time, I was working part time teaching child behavior and development. So I eventually pulled them out to homeschool. So we did that. And like many homeschoolers, I took the school model and brought it home. And by November that year, my kids weren't listening to me because I'm mom. We have a love relationship. We do not have an authoritarian relationship. So if they don't want to do a math workbook, they say, I don't want to do the math workbook. And and more, we did less and less schoolwork and more play. We just did what we wanted to do. And it helped that I had a toddler and a preschooler underfoot too, because their needs took away from formal teaching at the kitchen table. And eventually I just gave up. You can see we had a few battles along the way, and my son wrote on here, I hate mathematics. This was great too. He today is an engineer. So along the way, he got back his love of mathematics, obviously. Um, but it was after many years of play, and he got back his love in high school. So, so that's what we did. So more and more, we just played for 10 years. Play. It was so much fun. We would do projects, we would travel, we would go on field trips, we'd meet up with other unschoolers. It was fantastic. And more, I delve into, well, why don't we teach kids this way? Pedagogy is a traditional way we teach kids, and andragogy is the way we teach adults. And this is unschooling right here. I go into more of this in my book, but I'm not going to tonight. So, like I said, they wrote the provincial achievement tests, and their first full day of school was grade 10 or 11 or 12, depending on the kid. Well, they didn't last long in the classroom either. Anywhere from 2 weeks to 2 months, they all left pretty well and wanted to do more self-directed high school education, whether it's online or whether it was correspondence. They just did the exams, got the credit, got out of there. In Alberta, we have this thing called grade 12 diploma exams. Um, and we found that really wonderful for unschoolers. So unschoolers can stay out of the whole system from kindergarten to grade 12 and learn however they want to learn. And they have the right to write the same exams that every other child writes. And that mark they get in the exam is what goes on a government transcript. So they would need the four core subjects. They'd need a math, English, social science, and an option. That would go in a government transcript, and that stands for their admissions to universities and colleges. Now, there are lots of ways. I outlined 14 ways to get into post-secondaries for unschoolers in my book, and we can talk about that later too. But my kids wrote diploma exams. Half of these were in the STEMs careers, and they got an average of 78%. The provincial average is 65%, so they didn't do too bad. So when kids are burning out from 16 years of preschool and K to 12 school, um, my kids were gearing up. They were like, wow, this is fun. So, so learners do not need 16 years of formal education. They absolutely don't. Four of my kids were accepted into universities. The fifth is applied this year. We don't know. We haven't heard anything. And three of them were in STEM fields. STEM fields. So when my kids started going to university and all their unschooling friends started going to university, I wrote the book, Unschooling to University, on the experiences of 30 of them. And of those 30 kids, we had, oh, I don't have the slide here, but anyways, 10 went into STEM careers. We had 4 engineers, 10 went into arts, and 10 went into humanities. So quite a range of careers. A lot of people, a lot of books out there still focus on going into entrepreneurship, which is fabulous, or arts, fabulous too. In fact, this year, one of my sons quit university. I say he got half a degree, but he wants to pursue something else. So wasn't really working for him, and that's okay. If it doesn't work, we're lifelong learners. We switch careers every 5 to 10 years as adults. Why not our children? Okay, so why make them learn things they're never going to need or want? Okay, everybody needs more play. I'm going to start talking at this point. If you're familiar with Peter Gray's work, Gordon Neufeld, Pat Ferranga, or Ken Robinson, they all advocate that kids need more play, more self-direction. I know Gordon Neufeld hasn't talked on this much, but when we've talked, he is homeschooling. He loves homeschooling. He loves unschooling. It's kind of neat to see their writings on this topic. Okay, many of you wonder, why have you not heard of unschooling? Why is this not in the mainstream? Why is this not in the media? As somebody who's really tried to get it out there in the media, I have faced quite the backlash. Anything I write doesn't get published. And that's because a lot of newspapers are, it depends on the government, it depends on the unions, but why you probably haven't heard this before is because unschooling doesn't make anybody any money. It is not a billion-dollar industry like school is. And there are a lot of jobs attached to the school industry that makes billions. So if it doesn't make anyone money, but it's the best thing for your child, why not do it? Why not try it? Okay, so at this point, I'm going to stop talking because we want this to be learner-centered, and I would like to hear your questions. How should we do this? If you want, I'm going to start going through the chat, and if you want, you can just unmute and ask the question. How's that? Don't tell me your name. We'll just be anonymous. Anybody want to ask a question? Oh, good. We got questions in the chat. Yay. Okay. We're moving from Ontario to Alberta next year. So glad to hear it can be done in Alberta. Oh, absolutely. Alberta is, the other thing in Alberta is you absolutely can get funding in Alberta. We bought so much Lego and Connects and board games and art supplies out of our funding. And then when the kids want to take classes, we used our funding to fund music lessons when they wanted them, and other things too, online classes. It's fantastic. You just need to find a supportive homeschooling supervising board. And among that, you need to find a supportive facilitator. I don't really recommend any particular board because it really depends on that year, that facilitator that they hire, how much training that facilitator has had in understanding unschooling. So I would definitely get on the Facebook group in Alberta and ask around what are good boards, ask for private recommendations. Um, and you have the right, if your facilitator is not supportive to the way you do things, even though you get funding, you have the right to ask for somebody else who's a better fit. And the next year, you have the right to change to a board that's a better fit. Okay, so definitely don't worry about that. Okay, we have a question. I'm wondering about a situation of a child that is likely not attend university but may need a high school diploma. Now, how that works is a lot of parents, if they don't want a government diploma, they make their own and under home education. So they, under English language arts, they write down a list of all the books the child has read. Now, this involves a bit of record keeping. And I've done that too, just because I wanted to write a book on this, but I wrote down the books my child read, like Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand, or really books. Um, didn't have a child read War and Peace, but pretty close, all the classics they get into. And I write down, and they may need a sample of an essay, but as much as possible, make a transcript. And I talk about this in my book too, about how under each subject heading, write down what your child has learned. Okay. Not so much what they did, but what they have learned through different resources. And a lot of parents use that. A lot of kids get into colleges that way by doing an interview, presenting that parent transcript, and maybe submitting an essay or not on why they want to go to a particular program. And a lot of kids have been successful. I'll be honest with you and say that competitive programs in the major universities are going to need the equivalent of grade 12 high school courses. Definitely. You're going to have to prove qualifications are, because they're competitive, not just students in the province are competing with international students, competing with out of province students. So there's only a certain number of seats in different programs. For example, in Calgary, the University of Calgary only had 140 first year engineering seats for about 10,000 applicants. That's highly competitive. But if a child is willing to go out of province, willing to go to a smaller college, they can still get a program that they want and get into. Okay, question. I was worried about having to have someone check in on the kids if I accepted the payments. Well, okay. So in Alberta, um, I hate to call it supervised, unsupervised model. It's more support, unsupported model. But under the supported model, you do have 2 facilitator visits a year. We've had that for the last 35 years. When I was unschooling, we had a facilitator come out in the spring and the fall, and they just sit and chat with the kids. They're totally promotion of unschooling, so they get it. If they don't get it, I don't have them back. I phone up the school board and ask for a replacement. So they have to endorse and accept what you're doing. And if they truly understand unschooling, they will see learning in everything you do, everything. So I wouldn't worry about that, Patricia. Stacy says, can you use funding for field trips like the art gallery, museum? Yes, absolutely you can. Unfortunately, it's just the child's portion, even though you have to go. So you can't claim your entrance, but you can definitely claim your child's entrance on all those things. And if you travel internationally, you can also claim museum entrances in Paris or Spain or wherever you're going. Okay, Shannon says, if your partner wasn't on board, how did you convince them it was way better? My kid's father's trying to get a court order demanding I send them back to public school, despite this being a much better fit for our family. Well, my partner, he wasn't too keen on home education. He didn't know we were unschooling until I told him when the kids got into university. But he traveled a lot, so he wasn't here a lot to see how we did things. Um, Shannon, if you contact me later, I can give you a spreadsheet of all the benefits of unschooling that might help you with your situation. Okay, so maybe email me and I can send that to you. It's the benefits for a child academically, socially, emotionally, and physically. So I hope that helps, but it's hard when parents don't agree. It really is. Okay, Christine says, I just pulled my son from public school beginning in January. I had to register him for homeschooling due to our provincial legalities, but we're taking the unschooling approach. He has autism, and I wonder if the progress report that I have to provide them yearly is going to be sufficient. His curriculum, regardless if he is public school or not, will not be the same. Um, any education system has to be supportive and aware for neurodiverse children. They have to. So if you modify what you're doing in the progress report, that is bound to be acceptable. Not too sure what province you're at, but it would have to be acceptable. So I wouldn't worry. It just even in Alberta, we have to cover a basic set of outcomes. There are 20 outcomes. Kids can play Minecraft all day and meet those outcomes. They're so vague. And they don't have to be met until the child is done the education system at age 20. So um, kids don't have to meet a benchmark year by year. They can work towards benchmarks, but no child, even in school, gets 100% every year. No child does. So um, whether they get 50% of those benchmarks or 60 or 90% really doesn't matter as long as kids keep progressing and learning. And from um, we know that from our knowledge of brain science. So I'm going to just show you this little video here. These are brain cells. This happens in every child. So this is one brain cell sending signals to another brain cell. And they send it by neurotransmitters down that axon, down to the axon terminals, to the neighboring dendrites here, to the neighboring. So whether a child is reading a book or completing a worksheet on fractions or playing a video game, this is learning in action. So watch this. Here we go. There. It's crossing this synapse, this gap here, and connecting with that other brain cell. And all children do this. Neurotypical, not neurotypical children, all learn. This is learning. Chemically in the brain, it doesn't look any different from the math worksheet to the video game. It's all learning. So whatever you do, you can't stop kids from doing this. This is what they do. They learn, and you can't force it either. And we know this now. We know this from brain science. So see how that's connecting? This is learning right there. Oh, okay. There's a lot of people that want the spreadsheet. Um, I will post the spreadsheet at the front page of unschoolingcanada.ca. Okay, so I'll put that up there tonight, and you can all download the spreadsheet to your computer. So absolutely. Okay, Lisa says, wait, I just want to make sure I didn't get any. Yeah, I know. Okay, Laura says, we are 3 years into homeschooling, started in a teacher directed, first year being super supported by board. Oh, good. Yes. Okay. Um, So Lisa says, I'm just digesting the information. Pulled my kids out of the system in 2020 and have basically unschooling. Good. Boys are interested in online gaming, coding, so they've been doing a lot of this. Okay. Yes. So you've obviously outfitted your house with maps and diagrams. That's excellent. That's good. Um, that's creating a learning environment, right? In unschooling, we call that strewing, where you leave things out to maybe catch their attention. Now, if kids are interested, say you've just put a new board game on the table and they walk by and go, whoa, what's that? I want to play that. Or they may walk by and go, yeah, for board games, no. So you're strewing, meaning you're putting that idea out there, but you're not forcing it. And that's what we did too. We had charts on the walls. I put a poster of the cell in the bathroom because, when the kids are there brushing their teeth, they need something to look at. So they're looking at this poster of the cell. And if you see that every day for a month, you're just going to start memorizing some of those cell parts, right? And then every month I put up a new poster and things like that. So yes, decorate your home. Make your home a learning museum. And if you don't want to do that, that's okay too. But yeah, just strew out things. You don't have to have a whole lot of resources when you unschool. Probably the internet and a library card's the best. And I like going to use curriculum sales and staying away from the workbooks. Kids, especially up to age 12, hate doing workbooks and textbooks. Hate it. They want to learn through movement and experiential learning. So I would buy all the games, toys, interactive things, like puzzle blocks and Lego and things like that. And they learned a lot of math through those things. And in curriculum sales, nobody buys those things. They all buy workbooks. So they're a cheap way to get that. Absolutely. Okay. Jody says, is there any information supporting how unschooling impacts children with ADHD or disruptive mood dysregulation disorder? Not a whole lot of information out there, Jody. There's not a lot of good studies out there. I know there's a lot of anecdotal people's experiences. I know my child with ADHD just was zoning out in a classroom, not interested at all, but would in a home environment that was very much customized to him, he did very, very well. So no, there's not a lot of information out there on that. So sorry. But I think any child that chooses what they want to learn are probably going to retain it, and that's going to help them later on as they get older and may have to learn some things. So Olivia says, do kids get friends when they unschool? And don't they regret that they were unschooled sometime when they grow up? Unschooling is the same as home education in terms of socialization, only they have a lot more time. So when we would socialize with other homeschoolers, sometimes the unschoolers tended to bunch together because we didn't have to talk about how to motivate our kids to do their work. But we all mixed together too. So my kids had friends who were definitely homeschooled. They had friends who went to school and they didn't get to see them until 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon after school was done. We hosted a Minecraft club for years, and the other homeschooling moms loved it because that was the carrot they used to get the work done through the week. It was Friday afternoons. And they say to their kids, okay, you get your work done, you can go to Judy's Minecraft club. And sometimes they didn't get to go because they didn't get their work done. And that was a little hard for my kids. They couldn't understand why, when Minecraft was so educational, their friends couldn't show up. So, but you notice, and I noticed too, is that kids have friends for different situations. A lot of kids leave high school and never see their high school friends again past that first year out. A lot of kids go to university and keep one or two friends from university, but not a whole horde of friends from university. And we have friends for each cycle in our life. When we have our first child, guess who all our friends are? They're not our single friends from college anymore if they don't have babies too. They're now our new baby groups. That's where we spend our time because that's our new reality. And that's where you have your friends. So, so kids will have friends wherever they are in life, whether regardless of what type of education they have. They absolutely. And we know from research is that kids only need one good friend. They don't need a horde of friends. They don't need a whole classroom of friends or even 3 friends or 5 friends. All they need is one friend. And that can be a sibling too. So it's not a bad thing. Your other question was, do they regret that they were unschooled? I'd say my kids didn't have any regrets. They now are quite the advocates of it. They liked their experience. They were very happy they had so much time. My son, one of my sons went on CBC and talked about how he had so much time on computer, and he was the one I really worried about, right? He spent hours on computer. And he liked the time. He had the time and the space to learn about networking and coding and all the things he needed to know about computers. And yeah, didn't regret not following the government curriculum very much. Okay, Patricia has started homeschooling in 2009. Now have an 8 and 6-year-old who never went to the public system and not. Oh, good. Wow. Well, okay, you have older children. Patricia says there's a great amount of diversity in the friendships she has because of the people she has met, they have met outside of school. Yeah, good. That's good. Excellent. Okay. Um, any more questions? If you want to unmute and ask anything. I have so many slides here. No? No more questions?
Hi, Judy.
Hi.
Um, do you, could we have access to these slides? I unfortunately signed in a little bit late and I was also on my phone and I couldn't see so great for a little bit of the group. Are those slides available?
We did record this. The recording is on now, so definitely yes. I have 200 slides here. I I pick and choose for what topic. Like sometimes I just do a topic of the 14 ways to get into post-secondary, and I choose those slides. So definitely this video will be posted at the front page of unschoolingcanada.ca. So yes, you betcha.
Thank you.
Question, Tracy. Yes, the homeschooling funding in Alberta is $850 per year. That's the same for unschooling. There's no difference. I think in BC it's still $125, but I could be wrong. Yeah, I'm not too sure if any other provinces give funding. In the USA, in some parts, such as Arizona, they get $7,000 per child. for whatever education choice they want to do, which is amazing per year. It's pretty amazing. Okay. Any more questions? We have a question. How have you dealt with people judging for your choice to unschool? That's a good question. I didn't tell many people I was unschooling, other than my unschooling friends, until my kids were in university. And the reason for that is because most people are so, as you know, very stuck in the school model as the only way. And any person or child that deviates from that is considered unschooled or uneducated. And I just decided I just didn't want to educate those people. So I didn't tell anybody until, and then my book's out there now, and I get a lot of questions now. Um, the relatives, no, even the relatives didn't know, because they knew we were home educating, and even that is so misunderstood. Like, I I remember driving my child and their cousin, and the cousin was telling my child in the backseat, "Oh, my mom wants me to get an education, so she won't let me homeschool." Well, what does that say to your poor child, right? They're 8 years old. Um, but our relatives never talked about our educational choices. It was dead silent. Like, it was so silent that you knew they didn't approve. And that was okay. That wasn't something I wanted to talk about or share with them. And it's kind of funny now because a lot of those relatives' kids have, um, they've dropped out of various educational programs because they were burned out. And yet, my kids weren't burned out. They were just gearing up because it was new to them. So, anyways, my all my relatives know I have a book out. Whether they've read it or not, I don't know, but everybody's quiet about it now. So when people judge you, I just say, um, read a book on unschooling and then come back and we'll have this conversation. Because again, it's not my job to educate them or defend what I'm doing. You know your kids best. Um, you're not going to mess them up. Like that slide I showed you with brains connecting, that's science. You're never going to mess that up. Your children are always going to learn, always going to know something new. You just can't stop them from learning. And yeah, Patricia, your 8-year-old says his friends online ask why he doesn't go to real school, and he struggled with this. Yeah, right. And now my husband's the greatest promoter of unschooling. Yet he was skeptical, but he's learned a lot about it too. And my kids have learned a lot about brains and how they work. And yeah, they're definitely going to do this with my grandchildren. So um, it's interesting. It's interesting. But yeah, it's still, just because it's not out there in mainstream, a lot of people do not understand it and have very, very definite opinions on it without even knowing much about it. So there's a lot of society myths there that learners need teachers, children need adults to occupy their time. Actually, the more and more you home educate, the more and more you unschool, the more and more they fill their time. A lot of you have been homeschooling a long time. Our government in Alberta seems to think there are educational resources and there's junk resources. So we've seen this with a few school boards where they'll only fund educational Lego. Well, tell me what Lego is not educational. That just burns my britches, because I think no, no. Every Lego kit should be funded. Even a bucket of Lego should be funded because everything is educational. Even video games are educational. My daughter's Steam Deck is educational. So, and I argue that, and they say, well, prove that it meets some outcomes, and I will prove that it does meet outcomes, and they just can't argue against it. So, a lot of people think learning and socialization only happens in school. A lot of people think play is frivolous, and a lot of people, especially from other countries that super value education, super value formal education, think the earlier the better, the more of it the better. And one of the questions I get is, if kids don't learn a work ethic, if they're not trained early in a work ethic, how will they get up for a job at 8 a.m.? How do they have to do something if they've never been made to do something? And I just say, when that prefrontal cortex develops, when they reach that final leap at age 17, they have self control to do what they want to do. It's not something that needs practice over time. They'll do it when they want to do it. So my kids used to sleep until 2 p.m. during their teenager years, which grew their brain. But I worried too. I thought, oh, will they ever get up for a job at 8 a.m.? You betcha. I see them now. They all hold career jobs. Well, 3 of them. And they get up when they have to. They get up for their jobs. They got up for 8 a.m. university classes. They had a really good work ethic. And yeah, it's a myth that it has to be trained into kids. Yes, messing up my kids is something I hear on a constant basis. We all worry about messing up our kids, Lisa. Whatever choices we make, whether we force them to go to school, they don't want to go, and yet we know it's not good for them, or they're complaining about it. We worry about messing them up when we bring them out to homeschool. We worry about unschooling, messing them up, but really you can't mess them up. And even like my son, who decided to go into a science career and needed to pick up math and science courses at age 19, 20, there's always constant learning. Kids can sign up for a course at any time in their life and change careers and prepare for new careers. You absolutely cannot mess them up. If you're here at this webinar, you're a fantastic parent, and you're caring about your kids. You want to do best for your kids. You're thinking this might be a way to do best for your kids. Your kids are lucky. You are a wonderful, caring, facilitating parent that's going to have or provide a fantastic education for your kids. Absolutely. Olivia says, don't kids get bored being at home or with parents all the time? Sometimes they do, and they go out. They meet up with a play date. And, unschooling does require a parent as a facilitator. There's some things they want to do, like learn to weld, that they can't really do at home. So they need you as a facilitator to make it happen. Maybe pay for a class, drive them somewhere. But we schedule play dates all the time. As you can see, this is my daughter at Girl Guides. We did Girl Guides because she was the only girl in a family of boys, and that was our thing to do. I was a Girl Guide leader, so she found a lot of friends through Girl Guides. Some were homeschoolers, most were not. And if kids get bored, they find things to do. They really do. Yes, Courtney, there will be a link. No worries. Whoops. Where'd another one go? Okay. Christine says, can you possibly repeat shorter version of how our kids can get a high school diploma if it's required for them to get specific jobs? Sure. I would say, so what parents do is they make a parent transcript, and you can call it something. You can give it a school name. I wouldn't like say I was going to do a transcript. I wouldn't say Arnall Academy because that has our name on, but I call it the Sunshine Academy or something. And really, job people don't care if they don't care which school they went to. They just want to know that kids studied at a high school level. So I would put on a transcript, English language arts, mathematics, science, social studies, interests, and miscellaneous. And under that, I would put down all the books the kids read, that particular child read, um, concepts they knew in mathematics, concepts they knew in science, books they read in social studies, anything they did, like if they attended a election debate, things like that. And I would just keep it to high school, grades age 15 to 18. That's all I would do. I wouldn't do anything before that whatsoever. And then there's a lot of templates for this on the internet. And there they can legitimately put on a job application. They have a high school diploma. Job applications do not ask for a government issued high school diploma. They just want to know your kids have knowledge and skills at a high school level. And whether they were home education or not, job people don't need to know that. They really don't. It's not, especially with privacy and FOIP right now, they don't need to know how your kids got educated or what school they went to. They just need a credible source that your child knows something. Now, a lot of times colleges may want to interview your child. They may want an essay, and those are doable too, right? So there's lots of ways to do that. Hope that helps. Okay, we are nearing our end. Any other questions? So, can play replace school? Absolutely. Especially kindergarten to grade 9. Grade 10, your 15-year-old might start wanting to think about what they want to do, but there's still a lot of options for high school too. There's online courses, there's a lot of options. Yes, I kind of covered that, Courtney. Kids who are ADHD do just as well if they self-direct their education. Absolutely. In fact, they do better because the environment is so much more customized, right? Oh, no worries, no worries. I mean, this is so good for neurodivergent children because it is so customizable and every child learns. Many of them, their brains work in different ways, but everybody is learning. Learning is the human condition. So if they learn what they want to learn, chosen by them, it's definitely much more deep learning and much more motivational learning. Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, I'm glad. He's so happy. That's the thing with unschooling. You have happy, happy, happy children. Happy children. My teenagers used to run in, they just sort of skip in the kitchen singing because they're so happy. And you know, there were times when Nintendo or somebody released a new game and they'd be playing a video game for months on end. And I'd just be waiting for the novelty to wear off. And then they'd start latching on to something else to learn or study that looks a bit more educational. But you'd be very surprised. Just let your child go, give them time, give them space, give them resources if they want it. Let them loose on what they want to learn. And if you want, take notes. I kept a record where I knew I was going to write a book, so I kept just a little paper thing. And each month I'd sit down and write down their aha moments or things I learned through a game. The first time my son learned about variables through playing a game, I wrote it down under math. And I thought, wow, he's learning in such a great, happy way, right? Um, and those are the moments you need because you are going to go through doubting spells. Absolutely. You're going to have dinner with your cousin whose two children are stars at their school, and you're going to feel like you're messing up your kids, right? And you're going to need to go through the recording, book recording that you've made of those aha moments and what your kids are learning through play to reassure yourself. You're going to need that. But keep in mind, every parent who unschools, we all need the perspective that I have, which is retrospect. I worried a lot. I'm not going to say you're not going to worry. You are going to worry, but I can say all kids learn. You can't stop them from learning, and you can't make them learn. It's going to happen with you or without you, with direct instruction or without direct instruction. So you're never going to mess up your kids. Absolutely. Okay. Great. I will end it here. And I just want to, if you haven't read this poem, this is my favorite poem. And I hope this was helpful. If I'm giving away my book, but postage is killing me, if you e-transfer me $20, if from BC to Manitoba, I can send it out regionally in those envelopes. And Ontario to Newfoundland, it has to go in a box. So I need $25 for that one. If you want to email me, I can pop one of those in the mail for you. You're going to need my email address, which is right here at jarnall@shaw.ca. So thank you for listening tonight. And I hope this was helpful. And enjoy, have fun. You're going to do wonderful. Okay. Bye-bye, everybody.